Before I start the next section, let me give you my final thoughts. From part 1, we can see it is clear we need laws regarding domestic violence. However, as we can see, laws alone aren't enough. One of the things is we need a better understanding of why some people engage in domestic violence, and see what is there anything we can do, maybe rehabilitation or counseling, to reduce the chance that they will, you know, commit domestic violence against somebody else. Also, same thing we can see, we need to do more than just arrest people, because what they're going to do, police, their hands are tied. All they can do is arrest people, and then when they're released, they end up getting released back into that cycle of violence. So we need to do more than that. Also, we need to counsel not just the mother, but also the children, again, to stop the cycle. So yeah, that's my final thoughts. There's at least one case. I go over genealogy, learn other people's family. At least one person, they did not even know, that they had a family history of domestic violence and alcoholism. And even though they didn't have that information, somehow they did stop the cycle. And of course, that doesn't mean that the home free, because sometimes these things skip a generation. So, armed with this information, they do know when they have, they already have sons, so they have to make sure to let their sons know, hey, this is in our family history. You need to be very careful and not, not continue this cycle of, domestic violence and alcoholism. So that's part 1. Part 2, now we go through his adulthood. What happens after all of this? So chapter 6, the world beyond. So we see in the last episode, last chapter, he decides to join the Navy, and this is the case for a lot of people. Even in my hometown, only about like 10% of the people in my hometown go, to college or university. So what happens to this 90%? Because here in California, I know a lot of people see California as a land of milk and honey, but the reality is, a lot of California, it's either hospitality, which is a fancy way for saying tourism, or agriculture, and sadly, both industries, most of their jobs are temporary, because there's not that much work during the winter months. Most of the jobs are temporary, part-time, minimum wage, no benefits. So you end up growing up living below the poverty line, and the only jobs available are going to keep you, living below the poverty line. So, but yeah, so I do understand. A lot of people, they do see San Francisco or places like that as the land of milk and honey, but for a lot of people, that's not the case. But some people, surprisingly, it works out. They come to California, and all of a sudden their life changes. So, well, we'll see. Let's see what happens to Chris. So, chapter 6, The War Beyond. The Navy gave Chris a choice: start Navy training in the Great Lakes, or move to Orlando, Florida. Now, Chris, you can see Milwaukee is in the Great Lakes, so why would he want to stay there? So, Chris decided to get as far away from his stepfather, so he chose Florida. So the Navy flew him on a plane to the base. The Navy gave him exactly what he needed: institutional structure, clear-cut guidelines, right, wrong, reward, punishment. The shock was no more tie-dye shirts, no more afro, no more light growth of facial hair, and, of course, you have to wear a uniform. Florida is also hot and humid. That's different from the Great Lakes. Your Great Lakes, you got wind, you got snow, you got so this is like completely different. So in that environment, he had to learn how to stay perfectly still, even though beads of sweat are flowing down both sides of his face. And of course, he made mistakes. No one told him you're not supposed to salute people indoors. So his punishment: go to the deck, learn how, where, and when to salute an officer. And to make it more difficult, he had to learn this while squirrels were leaping from fake palm trees and scattering across the deck. So, happily, good news, he passed the boot camp with flying colors. Graduates get to choose: would you like to work on the fleet, or would you like to go to A school? Now, he chose to go to A school because he wanted to learn how to become a medic. He wanted to help the less fortunate as well as changing and saving the world. There was one hiccup. No one told him that the Navy provides backup for the Marines, and he did not want anything to do with the Marines. If he wanted to join the Marines, he would have joined the Marines. However, he proved to them he learns quickly. The training took 12 weeks. He already learned the hard way to stay away from alcohol from his stepfather. However, his neighbor buddies drank, so he drank a little. And when it was too late to catch a ride, they had to walk all the way back. And to save time, they jumped the fence onto the shore patrol truck. So this is at nighttime, so he didn't even realize that the shore patrol truck was right there to, haha, yeah. So as punishment, the next morning, they had to talk with their captain, one of his buddies. Punishment was to get shipped to Southeast Asia. Now, granted, at this time, the war's winding down. They just need the Navy to bring the troops home. For Chris, he did not get that. Even though his purpose of going joining the Navy was to see the world, but instead the captain decided the punishment would be to play football at Camp Le Cheyenne. So instead his punishment was to stay in this country. So he spent the next 2 years in Jacksonville, Florida, to the Navy Regional Medical Center. He learned, worked, lived some football, some on-the-job education. Unfortunately, all the barracks are full, so they were sent to a wing that wasn't opened for patients. They were to stay there. However, their bad break turned into a blessing in disguise. They turned into Party Central, lots of space, sun deck, TV lounge. They even hooked up their stereos into a sound system. And this hospital is state-of-the-art, with some of the best and brightest staff. Chris was assigned to the general surgical ward. Again, keep in mind, most of the patients are not Navy, they're Marines and their families. He asked questions to the staff, and they didn't mind being asked. So he learned how to make life and death decisions. He was superior to anyone working in his position. He was respected by other doctors. He helped them out of jams. He was an advocate when they needed one. He also learned how to organize his time, and he loved what he's doing. He was also mindful of his role in helping patients' overall healing and well-being. He also made detailed notes for doctors and nurses so they would know what care their patients needed. He loved what he did what he loved. He was inspired to see patients overcome what sent them to the hospital. And same thing, these Marines, they came from the South. They're xenophobic rednecks. However, when they met Chris, they set their prejudice against African Americans aside. They went through personal transformation. They changed themselves by challenging their beliefs they grew up with. And it also transformed Chris. Chris learned firsthand not all people are black. He began seeing people as people. Under the skin, everybody's the same. Now, outside the base, there is racism everywhere. People using the N-word freely. Poverty plus illiteracy did that. Since he was in the Navy, he didn't suffer poverty. Instead, he wanted to help them, but at that time, he didn't know how. Keep in mind, he's 19 years old. They went on a trip to nearby Howard University, a co-ed campus. And then, because girls, they spent all their money. And again, punishment handed out one by one. One of his buddies got his pay docked and had the book thrown at him. While Chris was waiting for a sentence, one of the staff told him, "Just do your job and they'll forget about it." So staying focused was easier when Chris was off base. However, they were completely dependent on their money for food. They were no longer allowed free food on the base. Now, Chris did find a woman who was not in the military who prepared his meals. There was one funny incident, though. I'll try not to give out too much detail, but one night she tied him up to the bed and left. When his buddy knocked on the door to pick him up, Chris said that he's tied up at the moment. His buddy led himself into the apartment, saw Chris tied to the bed. As he untied Chris, both of them laughed. The hardest part of this job was helping Marines with problems with hemorrhoids and other issues in that part of the body. But he got to the point. He could drain abscesses, eat lunch at the same time. He lanced, drained, packed, made certain the infection was out, make sure the gauze is packed properly to continue to draw the infection out. Apologies, I can't spell. So colonels came in. The Marine colonels came in. Wide range of problems. When they learned that Chris is going to attend to their needs rather than the doctor, one of them threatened to write him up. However, Chris carefully explained suppositories are supposed to be inserted into the anus. And then when he did that, they turned into wimps and followed orders. So now 6 months in Florida, it's coming to an end. What is he going to do next? He's not ready to start a family of his own. Moreover, he wanted to learn more about medicine. In comes Dr. Robert Ellis. He's being discharged. He's leaving for San Francisco to set up his own research lab at the University of California Medical Center and VA, Veterans Administration Hospital. Dr. Chris told Chris he can help him. Pays $7,500 a year. But for Chris, Chris is making $400 a month, so that's $4,800 a year. Yep. About half. So Chris took him up on his offer. Questions, comments, constructive criticisms, asking for clarification, let me know. And I shall see you in a couple of days. Take care.